Hey guys, it's Persephone Plasmids, and today we are going to be talking about my top 5 video games that will mess with your mind. As always, beware spoilers for these games. Again, you have been warned. So coming in at number 5, I have the Stanley Parable. Now if you haven't played the Stanley Parable before, I suggest that you do because it's kind of amazing. I know that I say that about like every game, but that's only because I only talk about games that I think are amazing. You can get the Stanley Parable on Steam, and they also have a free demo, so if you aren't sure if you want to commit to buying it, then you can go and check it out that way. Basically, in the Stanley Parable, you play as, surprise, surprise, Stanley. Kind of like the movie Stranger Than Fiction, where you have a narrator who's narrating everything that you do. The only thing is that with the Stanley Parable, you can actually disobey the narrator and do what you want. So you have a lot of different options on how you can play the game. You can do what the narrator's telling you to do, you can ignore him, you can kind of do a half and half type of thing. It's kind of a crazy, like, mind-bending experience, honestly. Because I think the first time around I did everything that the narrator told me to do, and the game still kind of felt like it was breaking. It was really weird. But it really messes with your mind because it's like, do you want to obey the narrator? Do you want to disobey the narrator? And it just kind of gets weird. If you're a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you'll also probably like it. I don't know why, it just kind of gives me a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of vibe. So there you go. So check out the Stanley Parable on Steam. The next game I have that really messed with my head was Oxenfree. Look at it as this fun cinematic platformer that has a great story, great voice acting, great art design, but I think that that's doing the game a disservice because if you play through the game more than once, you actually get kind of a different story, but it's really subtly different, so you don't really notice a lot of the things that have changed, but they have. Again, spoiler alert. I guess what you can say is that if you play through it a second time, not actually playing through it a second time. You're playing through it still on your first time, you're just stuck in a time loop. Once I finished the game, immediately after I finished it, I went back to the main menu because I was like, this was so great that I want to play it again, and I want to do things differently and see what happens. And it didn't have a new game option. All it had was continue timeline, which was kind of weird and freaked me out a little bit. So I clicked on that and it looked like it was starting the game over, but it doesn't because you never left the game because you didn't beat it. On that note, I do have a theory that there's a way to beat this game, but you have to do it on like your very first fresh run through. So I'm going to buy the game again and buy it like on a different account and try to do that one of these days. So be ready for that. But you never actually beat the game, and so you never actually start a new game. You're always just constantly in the same time loop, and no matter what decisions you make, you're stuck there. That just was such a cool concept to me because I hadn't seen a game do that before, and I loved it. Oxenfree gets my vote for another game that really messed with my head. I feel like any list about games that mess with your mind would not be complete without Silent Hill PT. I know that that's not technically a game. It was more like it was a trailer for a game. But still, I can't tell you how incredibly crazy that game is. I mean, I know you guys probably all know by now because everybody's played it or at least seen somebody playing it. Another channel that I was a part of called Fabric and Fantasy, we actually did a playthrough. If you want to go check that out, I'll put the link in the description. And basically the entire time we were kind of playing through our fingers. Like, I didn't want to see, I didn't want to know what was going on, but I had to play through it. Just because I had seen so many people do it and everybody seemed to have a different experience, which I thought was odd. So we played through it. Towards the end of the game, we kind of had to cheat because we got so stuck. Like, we got pretty far, but then the end of the game where you have to trigger things by taking a certain amount of steps or turning a certain way or looking in the mirror at a certain time, it was just so crazily specific that I couldn't wrap my mind around it, and I'm really sad that we never actually got a game out of it. Silent Hill PT, man, that will mess you up. On this list is another cinematic platformer that is a side-scroller, and it's an in-browser game. It's called Coma, which you should look it up. I will put, again, the link in the description below so you guys can check it out. It only takes probably 30 minutes to get through it. It has gorgeous art direction, it has great music. They're making a sequel to the game called Once Upon a Coma. It's from the same people that made Pinstripe, which I haven't played yet, and I actually didn't know that it was the same person who made both of those games, and now that I know that, I really want to play Pinstripe, because I think I had kept seeing Pinstripe places and like on the Steam summer sale, and it has really cool art direction. It looks really pretty, but I don't know if I want to play it or not. But now that I know that it's the same person that did Coma, I'm definitely going to play it because Coma is amazing. And I cannot wait for Once Upon a Coma to come out. The reason that Coma really messed with me, and I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, honestly, is just that you don't know where you are really, or what you're doing, or who you should trust, because there's a lot of people around that could very clearly be sketchy, but you don't really have a way of knowing that. Like, there's no way for you to know if you should be following this little bird thing that's telling you where to go, or if you should be listening to your dad or your stepdad. I can't remember. He seems a little bit sketchy. And the whole time you're trying to get to this goal, but you don't know if you really want to, because the whole thing just has this really creepy vibe to it where you're like, okay, this is great, but do I want to get to this place? Because it seems terrifying. The end of the game is still super open to interpretation. It's a really quick play, so if you have time, you should check it out in the description box below and give it a play. I have a few honorable mentions before I get to number 1 on this list. First is Inside by Playdead. I loved Limbo, and I was really excited when I found out that Playdead was going to be making a new game called Inside. And once I played through it, it kind of left me how Limbo did, where I was just like, I don't really know what's happening. I don't really know what just happened in the end. And I don't know if I like what just happened, because I don't know if I want to be a giant blob person with a bunch of appendages for the rest of my life. But it was still amazing. Also, Portal 2 and Portal 1, really. I love both of the Portal games. Able to see my portal gun behind me and my companion cube with my little laser turrets up there. Go Aperture Science. I love the Portal games, and I feel like the whole time that you're playing them, you're like, I know I can't trust GLaDOS. I know this. I know it. And yet I still kind of want to. It's a very weird feeling, and of course in the second one, when you have to team up with her, you're like, is this really a good idea? Because I remember the first game, I remember how that ended. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place, and you don't really know if you can trust anybody. So those are my honorable mentions for today. Last but not least, the game that I think messed with my mind the most, which is funny because it's like a in-browser 20-minute play maybe, is Loved. Now, if you haven't played Loved, which I'm guessing you probably haven't because it's kind of a weird game and I don't even know how I found it, it's this really, really incredible game that I'm going to tell you what the premise is and then give you a chance to get away from this video and go play it so I don't spoil anything. Loved is basically this in-browser little black and white side-scroller. It's not anything super complicated, it's not really anything new or amazing. It just asks you in the beginning, are you a boy or a girl? And then, kind of like the Stanley Parable, you have sort of a narrator that pops in and out every once in a while, but only through text. And they kind of tell you what to do. And so you kind of have a choice on if you're going to obey them or not obey them. Now, this is the point where if you haven't played the game, you need to go and play it, and then come back to this video so that we can geek out about it together. So basically, the first time that I went through this game, I was obeying the narrator and what they were saying, all the way up until they basically told me to kill myself, and then I was like, oh, I don't think I should do that. So I disobeyed, and then all of a sudden the world started getting more colorful because it was a black and white side-scroller, and then suddenly, as I disobeyed, everything got more color. But it also got more complicated because it would kind of start glitching out, making it more difficult to beat the game, basically. So it was kind of this crazy, weird mind experiment where it's like, do you listen to this self-destructive voice that's telling you to do things against your better judgment and then make the, get through the game easily, or do you disobey to kind of keep your best interests in mind, but then make it so that the game is really difficult to get through? It's a really simple game. It's 8-bit, it's in browser, it's free, it only takes like 20 minutes unless you're me and you keep dying because you're terrible at platforming. And I suggest that you go check it out because it's crazy. Those are my top 5 games that totally mess with your head. Let me know in the comments below what games messed with your mind. I know that there's a lot I don't have in this list because I haven't played them. I've been told Amnesia is one of those games that kind of does that. I can't wait for Call of Cthulhu to come out because I think that's going to be one. And also Visage, if they ever end up finishing it, because I know it was kind of in limbo and now it's coming back. maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed. So we'll see. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.